Let's talk about the method references. From the local class to Lambda expressions, we get rid of all those ceremonial code. We just uh, specify the parameters we want to pass in the only abstract method in the interface. Then we supply the method body at the right side of the uh, arrow, the arrow key. So using Lambda expressions, our code became extremely concise. And there is a more syntax sugar in Java 8. So if your Lambda expression only do one thing, like it's delegate the functionality to an existing function, we can use method reference instead of a Lambda expression. Let's take a look at an example. Here are the method references. It's using the existing person class. And in the main function, we create the roster, which is array list with 4 persons, their name, birthday, and the sex, and email address. First thing is it iterates through the persons, print their name. So we can run the program. We see those 4 persons are printed out. The next thing is we want to sort those persons. The sort function expects a correction and a comparator. So traditionally, how we deal with this problem, we use a local class which implements the interface. Inside the method, the class body, we override the abstract method. The comparator only have one abstract method, which is compare. So because it only have one abstract method, we can simplify all those processes with lambda expressions. When we supply a lambda expression as a parameter to an interface, and that interface have just one abstract method, the compiler have no problem figuring out the left side is for the parameter list, the right side is for the method body of that only abstract method. For this particular example, if we examine the method body, this function is already defined in the person class. So let's copy this code block and let's call an existing method defined in the person class. They do exactly the same thing. So if we check the compare by age, let's get a birthday compared to another person's birthday. Semantically, this block and this method body are the same. So why not just call an existing function and reuse the existing code? That is good practice. So if we examine this lambda expression more closely, we find out this lambda expression didn't do anything interesting. The only thing it does is dedicate the functionality to an existing method. So why not get rid of this bridging code and just tell the compiler what method you want to delegate to, and leave the compiler to fill in those ceremonial code. That's why Java 8 introduced the syntax sugar of method reference. The double column is a new operator introduced in Java 8. So if your Lambda expression only delegates the functionality to another method, you can use a method reference directly. Tell the compiler which one you want to reference, and the compiler have no problem mapping the input parameter to the delegated method and use the delegated method as method body, as abstract method as method body, which is sort as comparator. Use the method body here. So it's not it's a few layers back, but you just cut all those things straight with this method reference. This method is body. Directly go into the interfaces abstract method. Go into compares method body. And your code became more concise. Of course, we don't have to use a method reference, but this is a syntax sugar introduced in Java 8. Make your code more concise. If we go back, there are 4 kinds of method references. You can reference a static method. The syntax is containing class name and the method name. Or you can reference to an instance method of a particular object. In that case, it's an object reference followed by the method name. And a reference to an instance method of an arbitrary object of a particular type. And the syntax is type name followed by method name. Of course, you can reference to a constructor. Pay attention to the new keyword. All those 4 types are in the example. We already see the static reference inside the person. The compile by age is a static method. So here we can just use a double column to reference the static method inside the person class. And the second type is we want to reference an instance method of a particular object. Here is that class, an inner class. We first create an instance of that inner class. Then through the reference to that object, we reference the particular method of that instance. Here is an object of the class. The methods only exist inside this particular object. We reference this particular method defining this particular object. If we cannot use the method name to refer to the method because we cannot use a class name in order to reference a method, because the error message is cannot make a static reference to the non-static method. You see, we have to create an object first, then reference the method through the object. The third one is a little bit hard to explain, so let's spend some time on it. It's reference an instance method of an arbitrary object of a particular type. Here we want to sort. When we sort, we want to compare to ignore case. So we compare this string with this string, and the the method to compare is compare to ignore case. Different than before. If we check the compare by age, it have two parameters. The first parameter is the first person, second is the second person. And however, this one, compared to ignore case, it have only one parameter instead of two. So in order to call this, let's expand this to a lambda expression. If we expand this method reference to lambda expression, it's this way. We have two parameter, A and B, which we want to compare, and they actually calls A equals ignore case B. Since this is a lambda expression, we see A equal B. Should we have a return? Inside the curly brackets. So what is complaining? Change method return to boolean. A equal ignore case. Oh, okay. Compare ignore case. I use the wrong method. Okay. Now this time it's okay. And since return type, even the return ceremonial part can also be deleted. We just use compare ignore case. In this case, the A can be any string. A can be any string defined here, and the second parameter can be any string here. So in this case, we not say the compare to ignore case in any particular string. We want to say any string. So in that case, we use the type, the type's class name, followed by the method, and the compiler have no problem to figure out this is a lambda expression we want to use, because you don't have any option. There's only two parameters, and in order to call this method, you should call it through the instance of the first parameter and pass the second instance as a parameter to the method. And this is the only option. And compiler have no problem to figure out if you specify method reference this way, you mean this lambda expression. Of course, if you mean this lambda expression, the compiler have no problem to figure out you are trying to provide local class like this, and just we strip off all those non-essential part, only keep the very essence of the whole business logic. Like it or not, this is a new Java 8 feature, and personally, I think this is a beautiful syntax sugar. Finally, we can reference a constructor with a class name followed by the new keyword. Here, the transfer element expects a collection and a supplier. Okay, and we passed in a constructor. Let's check the supplier, why the constructor can be passed in for the supplier functional interface. The supplier is a functional interface. It has only one abstract method. which takes no parameter and return an object of the specified type. And our constructor just do that. Constructor takes no parameter and it returns a new instance of hash map, which is type we specified. In here's a person. Again, I need to mention the compiler did one more trick. Here we didn't specify we want a person as a return type, but the compiler figured it out because it can inspect the context. So if the compiler checks the transfer element, it knows the return type is a set of person. Okay, if you check the transfer element, the returned type is a dest. So this dest and this dest is the same one, and we already know it returns a collection, and so we already know the return type. So the compiler knows the return type is the same type as the supplier's type, and so it fills this part for us. Fill the person. Here we don't have to explicitly mention we need a person. The compiler figures this part out from here by inspecting the method body. So the compiler is really smart here. And that's a constructor. So here's a constructor. We pass in a constructor, and when calling get, the constructor created a new instance and returned it to us. So we get a new hash map. It's a hash map. We get a new hash set. We get a new hash set. And once we get that hash set, and we iterate through the source and get all the element copied into the hash set. But we already know collection, so this kind of for loop have no reason to exist in the Java 8. We can either use stream or bulk collection of bulk action of the collection framework. We don't need to use a for loop. So here, let's just use a result. Result. Add all from the source. That will do exactly the same thing the for loop is using. So, but we get a more concise code, and the code is kind of more declarative. Run the program. It's do the same, just with a different way. Okay. That's topic of method references.